For more than 2,000 years, nobody could figure out how eels have sex. Aristotle dissected them and concluded they didn't. He believed they simply rose up from the mud, fully formed through spontaneous generation. Pliny the Elder thought baby eels hatched from the skin scrapings of adults rubbing against rocks. In the 1700s, an Italian professor offered a cash bounty to anyone who could find an eel with eggs inside. The only specimen he received turned out to be stuffed with eggs from a completely different fish. And in 1876, a young Sigmund Freud spent 4 weeks in a laboratory in Trieste, Italy, dissecting over 400 eels in search of their testicles. He eventually found what he was looking for, buried deep in an abdominal cavity, but the experience apparently disturbed him so much that he later scrubbed the paper from his list of publications. That's the animal behind one of the most expensive dishes in Japanese cuisine. A single bowl of unagi, grilled eel over rice served in a lacquered box, can cost $90 at a specialty restaurant in Tokyo. And the reason it costs that much has nothing to do with the sauce, the rice, or the chef's skill. It's because the eel itself is almost impossible to produce. We can farm them, but we can't breed them. And the difference between those two things is what makes Japanese eel so expensive. Here's what I mean. Every farmed eel you've ever eaten started its life in the ocean as a wild animal. Every single one. Because despite decades of research and hundreds of millions of dollars in funding, no one has managed to breed eels commercially in captivity. The animals simply refuse to reproduce unless they're in the open ocean, at a specific depth, in a specific location, under conditions scientists still don't fully understand. For Japanese eels, that location was a total mystery until 2009, when a research team finally pinpointed their spawning grounds, a patch of deep ocean west of the Mariana Islands, roughly 2,000 to 3,000 kilometers from the coast of Japan. That's where adult eels swim to at the end of their lives after spending 5 to 15 years in freshwater rivers and lakes. They mate, they spawn, and they die. No human being has ever witnessed this happen in the wild. After hatching, the larvae, which are flat, transparent, and leaf-shaped, drift on the Kuroshio Current for months, slowly making their way back toward East Asia. By the time they reach the coastlines of Japan, Taiwan, China, and South Korea, they've transformed into what are called glass eels, tiny translucent juveniles about 5 to 6 centimeters long. And this is the only point in their life cycle where humans can intervene. Fishermen catch these glass eels in estuaries and river mouths, usually at night, usually in winter. The catch window is narrow, the volumes are unpredictable, and the eels are small enough that 1,000 of them weigh about a kilogram. In the 1960s, Japan was catching tens of thousands of tons of glass eels per year. Today, that catch has collapsed to roughly 10% of what it was. The Japanese eel was listed as endangered by the IUCN in 2014, and the Japanese Ministry of the Environment had already classified it as endangered the year before. This collapse is what transformed a common food into a luxury item. In 2009, wholesale eel prices in Japan averaged around 2,300 yen per kilogram. By 2019, it more than doubled, crossing 5,000 yen. And the glass eels themselves, the tiny juveniles that farmers buy as seedlings, have become so valuable that they've earned a nickname in the industry, white diamonds. The numbers back up the name. In 2018, imported glass eels hit a record price of 3.9 million yen per kilogram in Japan. To put that in perspective, that's roughly $35,000 per kilogram for baby fish the size of your finger. At those prices, glass eels become more valuable by weight than cocaine. And that comparison isn't just rhetorical, it's literal, because the eel trade has attracted exactly the kind of criminal enterprise you'd expect from a commodity that valuable. Europol estimates that around 100 tons of glass eels are smuggled out of European Union waters every year, destined for Asian fish farms. The operation works like drug trafficking. Poachers catch elvers at night using illegal nets. Middlemen with legitimate fish trading businesses launder the catch. Smugglers pack live eels into oxygenated plastic bags, wrap them in thermal blankets, and stuff them into suitcases for flights to Asia. Between 2015 and 2023, Europol's Operation Lake resulted in over 750 arrests across more than 30 countries and seized 26 tons of live glass eels that had been prevented from reaching the black market. In one bust in 2023 Italy alone, 256 people were arrested and 25 tons of trafficked eels were recovered, worth an estimated €13 million. Japan has cracked down too. In December 2023, the government passed a law making it illegal to fish glass eels without a permit, punishable by up to 3 years in prison and a 30 million yen fine, up from the previous penalty of 100,000 yen. The previous fine was so low, it was essentially just a cost of doing business for organised crime syndicates that had been profiting from the trade for years. Even with legal supply, farming the eels is expensive and labour intensive. Glass eels are placed into concrete ponds, primarily in Kagoshima and other southern prefectures, and raised for 7 to 10 months on a specialised diet of fish meal, wheat flour, soybeans, fish oil. They're fed twice a day at precise times. The ponds have to be kept meticulously clean because a single disease outbreak can wipe out an entire stock. Workers monitor water quality constantly. After 6 to 12 months of careful nurturing, the eels reach a marketable size of roughly 200 grams each. Japan's domestic aquaculture produces about 20,000 tonnes of eel per year. The country consumes around 50,000 tonnes annually. The gap gets filled with imports, mostly from China and Taiwan, which account for about 2/3 of the total supply. Many of those imported eels were originally grown from glass eels, caught in places like Japan, South Korea, sometimes smuggled from Europe and the Americas. There's one more layer to the cost. It's the preparation itself. Unagi has been a central part of Japanese food culture for centuries. Kabayaki-style grilling dating back to the late 1600s. Technique involves filleting the eel, skewering it, grilling it over charcoal while basting it repeatedly in tare. Glaze made from soy sauce, mirin, sake, sugar. The Kanto style, practiced in eastern Japan including Tokyo, eel is grilled plain first, steamed to soften the flesh, grilled again with the sauce. Kansai style, practiced in Osaka and western Japan, eel is grilled directly without steaming, producing a crispier texture. Specialist restaurants, some of which have been serving eel for over 200 years, chefs guard their tare recipes like family secrets. Sauce is often maintained as a living thing, new batches added to a base that's been building for generations. Apprentice chefs at these restaurants traditionally train for years before they're allowed to handle the eel themselves. The well-known saying in the industry, 3 years to learn the skewering, 8 years to learn the splitting, a lifetime to learn the grilling. Also the cultural dimension that drives demand. Japan has a centuries-old tradition of eating eel on the midsummer day of the ox, called Oyo no Ushi no Hi. Custom likely began as a marketing ploy during the Edo period. Fishmongers promoted eel as a stamina food for surviving the hottest day of the year. Worked. This day, sales surge on that specific date. Supermarkets and restaurants across Japan stock up weeks in advance. Tradition is so embedded, even with prices tripling over the past 2 decades, consumption on that day barely dips. Why can't science solve this? Why can't we just breed eels in a lab and skip the entire wild catch bottleneck? Researchers have been trying since the 1960s. Problem is that eels in captivity won't develop reproductive organs on their own. Scientists have to inject them with hormones weekly for months to force egg and sperm production. Even then, the fertilized eggs produce larvae that are extraordinarily difficult to keep alive. In nature, the larvae eat marine snow, a mixture of decaying organic matter suspended in deep ocean water. Replicating that diet at scale has proven nearly impossible. In 2010, a Japanese government lab achieved something that had never been done before. Raised 2 consecutive generations of Japanese eels entirely in captivity. It was a scientific milestone. The process was so painstaking and expensive, it had zero commercial viability. The cost of producing a single artificial glass eel in 2016 was over 40,000 yen. In 2023, researchers had driven that down to about 1,800 yen per eel. Wild-caught glass eels still trade at roughly 500 to 600 yen each. Japan needs 100 million of them every year just to stock its farms. Math doesn't work yet, but getting closer. In the meantime, what you're paying for when you sit down to a bowl of unagi isn't just a piece of grilled fish. You're paying for an animal that was born somewhere near the Mariana Trench, drifted across thousands of kilometers of open ocean on a current, caught as a transparent sliver in an estuary in the middle of the night, raised for almost a year in a carefully managed pond, to a restaurant, fed by hand, skewered, steamed, glazed, and grilled over charcoal using a technique that hasn't changed in 300 years. The entire supply chain depends on a creature whose reproduction has baffled scientists from Aristotle to Freud, still isn't fully understood today. That's why it's expensive. Found this interesting? Subscribe. Next time, looking at another food where the price keeps climbing and the supply keeps shrinking. The reason why will surprise you.